This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin. Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. Every generation have their moments. There are moments in time where things are really good. And then there are those segments of your life, maybe collectively, within your group that you're moving through life with, where times get really, really tough. We're in one of the spots right now. Work for many is diminished. Sometimes you can't find a job. And if you can find a job, many of those jobs really don't pay a livable wage. So if you are essentially desperate and someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I have a job for you. And by the way, you can stay at home while you do it because you've got little kids," that's a heck of a temptation. But the problem is that many times these individuals that offer these jobs don't have your best interest at heart. As a matter of fact, sometimes they'll bait you with something that sounds too good to be true. And today, in this particular case, we have a young mother that was baited. And it wound up in the death of her unborn child. And also her. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. I don't think anybody out there, most folks at least, they don't consider that getting in a car is that they're going to wind up in a terminal event in their life. Nobody in their right mind would get in the car, but in this case, this poor woman did.
Well, it was a setup. You mentioned about a job and working from home. In this story today, that was the connective tissue of making everything happen. Was you have Ashley Bush, who is 33-year-old mother of 3, very pregnant and having a difficult pregnancy, but looking to make money at a job that is online that you can do from home. We used to make jokes about making extra money at home in your spare time by licking envelopes. That was the 70s and 80s and 90s even. But over the last, since COVID, in reality, since COVID, we've got a lot of jobs that became work from home jobs. Now, granted, that is going back the other direction now when they realized that probably 70% of people who were working those jobs were not working a full day. But that's what Amber Waterman was offering to Ashley Bush. But she wasn't doing it as Amber Waterman. What she did is Ashley Bush responded to a Facebook post about a job from home in your spare time by a woman named Lucy. Lucy is offering up this job, and Ashley reaches out. This is perfect. I'm all about this. Let's get together. She was overjoyed with the thought of being able to get a real job and work from home in her spare time. This is a big deal for a mother of 3 who's pregnant. And all I could think of, Joe, was how hopeful she had to have been.
Oh, yeah.
Going to that first meeting to meet with Lucy, just excited. Ashley actually went with her fiance. They were so excited. He drove her there. And imagine what that's like to be filled with such joy at the prospect of actually having the dream where, I'm having a tough pregnancy, but now I can do this. I can work from home. I can do, This is a godsend. What a relief.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
No, that's what Lucy did. Lucy preyed upon that and talked her into it. And so they got together, they met, and Lucy then set up a time. Again, very official. Well, I want to hire you, but we got to get you to meet my boss. So I'll go ahead and arrange all that, and I'll let you know. Now, I'm guessing, based on a couple things here, that maybe Ashley and her fiance only had one vehicle that was operating at the time because he drove her, or maybe she wasn't comfortable driving with the pregnancy. I don't know. But it's enough that he was involved in this aspect to provide some of the narration of what was taking place. But Ashley meets up with Lucy, and Lucy's going to take her to meet the boss, the supervisor, who will okay her hiring. And that's not what happened at all. Ashley was kidnapped, and bless her heart, her fourth child was not delivered in a hospital by a doctor. Her fourth child was cut out of her womb by a non-doctor whose goal was to steal her baby.
Yeah, I sit back and I'm thinking. I used to have a buddy of mine that would use the term. He would, if somebody did something really stupid, he would look at them and say, "Does your mind work?" And I can't imagine in any universe where anyone that could string a couple syllables together, that's a baseline,
right,
that you would actually think that you could take a pregnant woman and essentially plan this thing out where you're going to kill her and then remove the baby that is growing within her.
Oh my goodness.
And you're not going to get caught at this. First off, this whole idea of, and we've seen this before too, Dave, where the perpetrator will attempt to almost disguise a pregnancy, where they'll come up with some story that says, "Yeah, well, I spontaneously had this baby."
Right.
And you go back investigatively and you look at say, for instance, the history of an individual that attempts to do this. Well, their judgment is so clouded because they're so focused on this horrific deed that they're going to undertake that I don't think that they think about this and give it serious consideration, that everybody in their peripheral circle, and I mean everybody, is going to not notice that she wasn't pregnant, and then suddenly she's going to appear with a newborn child. Mm-hmm. Unless you're living in total isolation where there is no one that has really any kind of substantive awareness of your existence or your life at that point. I don't see how anybody could figure that they're going to pull this thing off, Dave.
Well, I wondered what happened. How did they discover that Amber Waterman did this? Okay, because she shows up. She actually calls 911, and they send out paramedics, because this woman is claiming she's just given birth in her truck. And I'm thinking about that phone call, Joe. I mean, if you're a responder, not her making the call, she's cut the baby out of the womb. She's got a stillborn child is what she's claiming. And she's claiming she gave birth in her truck. And the first responders, I'm wondering what they're thinking of. Okay. I'm wondering, how are they responding to this? Because you have a woman that claims she just gave birth in her truck and the baby is dead. That's traumatic.
When a medical professional begins to assess an individual, and this extends to paramedics, who are fantastic at what they do in the field, because they're out there, what do they say, without a parachute. Essentially, they're having to render aid in the field, and they can communicate, with an emergency room that has a physician. But let's face it, they have to do these assessments out in the field and do what they have to do. They're going to want to see you and get an idea from an assessment standpoint, they're going to want to see your body. Okay. And, and a woman who has had a vaginal delivery, and certainly in the immediate, is going to present in a particular way, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And they're also going to want to know if, say, for instance, she gave birth. One of the things that, and I remember this very distinctly with my own children, it's not just giving birth. If it's a standard vaginal delivery, it's not just giving birth to the child, but you have to push out the placenta. Okay. And so the question would be, I think, well, where's the placenta? All these other issues that arise. And here's the thing, Dave. When they're doing an assessment on someone who claims to have just given birth, their focus is not just on the mother; it's going to be on the child as well, because they want to render aid to the child. You're talking about the spontaneous delivery that she's claiming that she had, and there's no evidence of that. And for me, if I was out there as in a paramedical role, the first phone call I'm making is not back to the emergency room or not back to headquarters. I'm going to get on the radio and say, you need to get the police here, like ASAP,
right?
Because we've got to assess the situation and try to determine what the status of the child is, Dave.
Well, now, Joe, when somebody claims that the baby was stillborn, died in utero, that's the actual term, the baby died in utero, how can you determine how the baby died? I mean, dying in utero, dying before being born? Is that what we're talking? Okay. And then can you medically determine that that's what happened and where?
Yeah, you can. Many times, particularly if you have a mother that's not going for prenatal checks, one of the first things that if the mother's following the course that is prescribed by her OB, when you go in for these checks, they're going to do a pelvic exam, essentially, on the mother, where they do an internal examination. But the biggest thing they're going to do is, first thing that's going to appear, it's going to be the nurse practitioner or the physician assistant or the physician is going to drop those stethoscopes in their ear and start to listen for fetal heart sounds. And that's the initial assessment, because the patient, the mother to be, is being followed along these steps. And so if there is an absence of a heartbeat at that moment in time, then the doctor will look at this and they'll say, well, you know what? I'm not hearing a heartbeat. Let's take this a step further. And they begin to assess. Many times with in utero deaths, you will have, and I think many people might not be aware of this, but when, for instance, if we have a stillborn baby that we have to do an examination on, say, for instance, in the morgue, there are literally, Dave, decompositional changes that take place within the mother's body. And doctors many times will make note of this in the sense that they'll use terms like macerated. Macerated.
Wait a minute, in the mother's body? Decomposition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I would have never in a million years known that.
Yeah, and you can see these changes, that take place. There'll even be things like skin slippage and these sorts of things. And of course, if you're being followed by a physician, they will go ahead and induce labor, and have, if that's possible, to have a vaginal birth and have the mother deliver the child, stillborn, of course. And there will be marked changes. But if we have a child, for instance, that is discovered, say out at a crime scene, where the child is just, lying there, and deceased, we would, in fact, at autopsy, do what's referred to as a float test. And so that means that the baby's, during the course of the examination, the baby's lungs would be taken out. And one of the checks that you do here is to see if the lungs have ever been aerated. So if they're if they've never breathed, for instance, outside of the womb, that's going to be a big clue for us because, the lungs would literally float, in a bucket. And that's the way it's been done for years and years. And it's one of the things that we check for. Not to mention, when you think about these changes that take place to the baby's body in utero, if the baby is deceased, we would make note of that. But if you find a baby that has been delivered in some manner, the big question is this: was the baby viable? Was the baby in such a state that it could have survived out of the womb? And in this case, this baby, if brought to term, could have had a full life.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining this sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Under normal circumstances, Dave, and look, you're a daddy. You know this. You're a grandpa too, just like me. When mom gives birth, it's not just the baby being simply delivered. It is also the process of the placenta being delivered as well, because placenta has to be pushed out. In addition to that, and here's something else that I don't know that people necessarily know. Did you know that when a placenta is delivered, that placenta most of the time is going to go to the hospital pathologist, and they're going to take a look at it, and they're going to look for any abnormality. They do devote hospital pathologists. That is, they spend quite a bit of time doing these examinations of placentas that have been passed, which has to happen as a process of the birth. I think for every well, with the exception of one, Isaac's birth, it was C-section. Mm-hmm. To that point, the babies, after the baby is passed, you'll hear the doctor say, okay, you still got to push. We've got to get this placenta. And so the question arises, what becomes of the placenta at that moment in time? And you're talking about a baby that would be born away from a medical facility. Would the mother in a case like this continue to push out the placenta? And you'd want to know where it is, because you're going to have to assess the placenta as well. And can you told me something that is markedly disturbing, Dave, on so many levels about this case.
Here's the description of what took place with Amber Waterman after calling 911. Amber traveled to meet an ambulance at a store in McDonald County. Amber told detectives that she had delivered a stillborn that evening. McDonald County Sheriff Evenson said that they responded to reports of a newborn baby not breathing. EMS intercepted the couple on the way to the hospital. And according to the county coroner, B.J. Goodwin says Amber allegedly had the placenta in her pants when EMS showed up, causing her husband, Jamie, to think she had the baby. They called a helicopter to take baby and Amber to the hospital, but they could not revive the baby. The baby died. Amber allegedly refused medical treatment, so the baby was taken to an area funeral home, and the placenta was retrieved from her. It appeared this is the part that gets me. I don't know how you tell this, but it appeared the baby was, quote, cut out of the mother. How would you know that, Joe? You've got you have a stillborn baby. That's what you're told. Even though we know what actually transpired, how would this baby present that they would know that? Or is that something said after the fact, after they put all the pieces together, saying that it appears this is what took place?
Well, the phraseology here is that, God, this is so despicable, is what is being implied here is that the baby was actually injured in the course of this non-surgical removal of the baby from the mother's womb. And so the baby would have sustained trauma. And we're talking about potentially edged weapon type trauma, where you've got slices, perhaps. I don't think, for years and years, for decades, for centuries, women have died in childbirth. It's only in the modern course of things where we've gotten to a point now in America, I can't speak to the rest of the world, where you don't have a lot of women die in childbirth. This is a surgical event that takes place, okay? And there's a reason OBGYNs have an understanding of how to deliver a baby via C-section, okay? It's a delicate thing. I think that people just automatically think, well, this is very simple. It's not. You have literally a tray of surgical tools that are there in the delivery room in the event that it is not going to be a vaginal delivery, and they have to intervene at that point in time. But it's a very delicate thing that has to take place. If in fact you're talking about a case where someone is using perhaps household cutlery or something that is not meant for surgical intervention, you're damn right there could be injuries to this baby. And that would be evidenced in the examination.
Joe, it's the injuries to this baby that actually open the investigation. Like everybody else, I see a story and I start wondering what brought everybody, the principles of the story, what brought them all together. And in this case, it's really down to Ashley Bush, a 31-year-old mother of three, the major breadwinner in her family. And she has been diagnosed with gestational hypertension.
Yeah.
And was told you need to get off your feet and you need to be not doing a lot of work like that. What is gestational hypertension and how it impacts a woman who's pregnant?
Well, here's the thing. And of course, hypertension goes to high blood pressure is what it comes down to. And so if you have a mother that is presenting with this, and going back to what I said earlier, one of the things that you do in these prenatal checks is they're not just going to listen to mommy's tummy and listen for the fetal heartbeat and do that kind of assessment. They're checking mommy out too. All right. Sometimes they'll have to draw labs, all these sorts of things, and it's dependent upon the practitioner that's following mom. And so if they notice, in gestational hypertension, generally the mother will present with it when she's 20 weeks, 25 weeks downrange with her pregnancy. So the moment that she's gotten pregnant up until that point in time, where you've got this mom who is, trying to, essentially create this new life within her. If she has any kind of anomaly like hypertension, this could send her spiraling, because hypertension is a precursor for, say, for instance, a myocardial infarction. Because anything can happen. She can have some kind of rhythm event with her heart, And they're not just trying to keep mama healthy, they're trying to keep baby healthy, all right, at the same time. That's why, with the work that OBGYNs do, it's very delicate work, Dave.
Right.
And they have to have a sense of this. So when a mother presents with gestational hypertension, that's going to be the course of action. They're not necessarily going to medicate them, but when you think about the position that she's in, she has to stay off of her feet. She has to take it easy because there could be a possibility that she could miscarry at any point in time, because you got all these other wheels kind of spinning around metabolically in her body. And so they're going to, kind of take their foot off the gas, or tell her to take the foot off the gas with a life. And that's hard to do. She's a mama, Dave.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And she's the major breadwinner in the house. They've got 3 children. So this job working from home off her feet was that important. And that's where all of this comes in. Amber Waterman actually creates a person named Lucy Barrows on Facebook. She creates this person out of thin air. As Lucy Barrows, she advertises a fictitious work from home job opportunity that she shared with a group of mothers to be. Ashley Bush and her fiance, Josh Willis, responded and went to a public library. I said library, didn't I? I did not mean to.
That's okay.
Went to a public library in Gravette, Arkansas to meet this person named Lucy. As Lucy, Amber Waterman says that the women have to travel together to meet her supposed boss. 3 days after the meeting, they meet together to do just that. Now, as they leave together, Ashley Bush never returns. What actually happened is this. Amber Waterman admitted that she kidnapped Ashley Bush in order to claim her unborn child. The child already had been named. Ashley had already named her the child Valkyrie Willis. Waterman transported Ashley Bush from Maysville, Arkansas to Pineville. Kidnapping resulted in the deaths of both Ashley Bush and Valkyrie Willis. Waterman had to admit all this because they knew right away that this was, from the moment medical professionals looked at the situation, they knew she was lying. That's all I can tell you is they knew. And she admitted, Waterman did, to using a fake name, to conning Ashley Bush into this so-called job. Now, Ashley Bush is only 31 weeks pregnant. I want to get to that. But Waterman pretends to help Bush obtain the employment, suggesting this job opportunity. That's where they led to, you got to meet with my boss. That meeting was set for October 31st. And at about 11:45 that morning of October 31st, Ashley Bush met Amber Waterman at the Handy Stop convenience store in Maysville, Arkansas, under the pretext Waterman's taking her to meet the supervisor who will approve her hiring. Bush gets into the truck driven by Waterman. Waterman then kidnaps Bush, driving her from Maysville to the Waterman residence in Pineville. At about 5 o'clock, October 31st, first responders reported to the Longview store in Pineville for an emergency call of a baby who's not breathing. Waterman admits that she claimed to first responders that she had given birth to the child in the truck while on the way to the hospital. But in reality, she now admits the child was Ashley Bush's child, who died in utero as a result of Waterman's kidnapping that resulted in the death of both Ashley Bush and her child, Valkyrie. An autopsy indicates that Bush died as a result of penetrating trauma of the torso, and her death, of course, classified as a homicide.
Yeah, I've got something a little bit to add to that, Dave, because as it turns out, this is not just because, when authorities say that it was penetrating trauma, that can mean any number of things. For all we know, she was impaled on something,
right? Or
she was stabbed to death, or, I don't know. You could think of any number of things that might lead to a penetrating event. But here's what actually happened. This woman executed this mother-to-be with a gunshot wound. And when you think about this in the totality of it, the reality is this. Once that mother was shot, it sealed the fate of not only her, but her unborn child.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn sensational.
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The baby has tremendous potential to be viable. She's roughly probably about 10 weeks out, perhaps, from delivering, 9 to 10 weeks. Yeah, there have been babies that have been born much younger than that. And when I say younger, I mean gestational age, that have survived. Yeah. So yeah, there is a high likelihood that this child would have not only survived, but probably thrived.
But would that child probably require some medical treatment?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And a child that would be born that prematurely, you're talking about the child going into, the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, for a protracted period of time, because what they have to do is continue the development of this child outside of the womb. If for those that are that have never seen a NICU, it is an amazing place. It's unlike, say, for instance, the nursery, where we all think about, the old idea of looking through the window and seeing the babies that are newborn. They're all in there. Something completely different. You're talking about people that are the nurses and the doctors and the technicians that work in these places, the NICU itself. It's a world in and of itself. You'll see them walk around in scrubs. They've got masks on. It's a very controlled environment, and every one of these precious little lives is monitored. But they try to get these children to thrive, along the way outside of the womb. And sometimes this happens, obviously. And there's this, when I was a very young man and I first started working in a hospital environment, I met a neonatologist. The chances at that age that I would meet a person like this, this woman was so committed to what she did. She lived in the hospital for an entire week at a time and then would be off for a week. And literally there, and the reason I know this, I would engage her in conversation because she would be exiting the hospital to go for a bike ride. And that's how she kind of blew off steam, while she's there. She had a hospital room that had a regular bed in it that she would sleep in down the hall from the NICU, and it was there. And there were other neonatologists as well that would rotate in and out. But I was always fascinated by that because it's unlike any other kind of practice in medicine, because they're focused singularly on this one little life that they're trying to get to survive and thrive outside of the womb.
Amber Waterman admits that after killing Ashley Bush, she and her husband Jamie wrapped Ashley Bush in a blue tarp. They pour bar chain oil and gas on the tarp and on her body. They place Ashley Bush in their burn pit and light her on fire. After adding wood and a small sofa to the fire, they let it burn for about an hour. Then Amber Waterman douses the fire with water. Her husband rolls Ashley Bush's remains now in a blue tarp. They place Bush in the bed of Jamie's truck, and they drive a short distance from their house, where they pull Ashley Bush, her burned remains, out of the back of the truck, unroll her from the blue tarp, and leave her remains sitting there. They then drive back to their house, where Amber Waterman says she went home and burned the blue tarp. How burned could it be after just an hour using bar chain oil and gasoline, Joe?
Oh, it very insufficient to the task. First off, bodies, human bodies are not fuel. And you have to understand that with fire is basically you have to have a heat source. Obviously, let's say a match that you're going to strike, or a flare, or whatever the case might be. You have to have an initiator, like an agent, like some kind of petroleum-based substance. It can be kerosene, gasoline. In this case, they chose oil, which is a very slow burn, if you will, and also gasoline. You combine those two, and it would burn for a bit, okay, and it's essentially going to flash over. If anyone out there has an experience with striking a match and applying it to something so volatile as gasoline, you'll get that initial whoosh, like this.
Right.
So, and then you have to have a sustainable fire source, or strike that. You have to have a sustainable fuel source, which is going to be like wood. In this case, it sounds as though they attempted to use a sofa in order to continue this fire. And then you have to, you go back to this uninterrupted supply of oxygen that has to be present in order for this fire to continue to flourish. But the problem is that if you're attempting to do this in a wide open area, the fuel itself is going to be insufficient to the task in a very short period of time that they did this, because you have to be able to add fuel to the fire so that it's going to create coals and embers, and that heat source is going to continue to roll and roll and roll like that. And it's not going to do much to the body, particularly internally, when you begin to attempt to render it down, if you will. I hate that term, but that's the way we regard this. So you're talking about, I would say that probably the chances that the body was burned down to skeletal remains in just an hour are slim and none. You're still going to have soft tissue throughout the body. It's certainly not going to do damage to the internal viscera, the heart, the lungs, anything like that, and particularly any kind of wound tracks that are there. It's going to be complicated, though, to work this particular scene, because one of the things that you're considering, if they have a burn pile out there and she has been shot, okay, since their story is so convoluted, you don't know, for all you know, she may have been shot in that one location and then set on fire, because Lord knows they can lie. And if her body was so compromised and that round stayed in her body, it could fall out in the burn pile. You're talking about a sofa. Just check this for a second. Sofas have springs in them. And I've actually seen this in fire cases where we will take a body that we collect at the scene, place it into a body bag, and then that body bag is brought into the morgue, and we try to get everything around the body that we can. We do x-rays on that body, and you'd be amazed what shows up on the radiographs. You'll see things like nails, bolts, springs, things that you might not can make out, but you know that it's some kind of radio opaque metallic object that's there. So everything is kind of mixed together in this environment, and it's a convoluted mess. But you talked about you're creating more evidence. Well, they are creating more evidence, because now you're introducing a tarp that can be tied back to somebody. Perhaps you're talking about an accelerant, if you can identify that accelerant, what was used. And we're talking about, I believe you had mentioned the chainsaw oil.
Right.
That's a different substance than just standalone gas. Okay. Mm-hmm. So those two things are chemically, they're going to appear to be different. So you talk about the clothing that she still had on. That clothing, if this substance was applied directly to the clothing, that clothing would be collected at autopsy. Any remnant, even the stuff that's below the body, is going to be taken off, and it's going to be submitted into fire examination analysis. I'm very curious, though, relative to their assessment that this was an execution event utilizing a firearm. Did they recover a projectile? And if so, what type of projectile was it? And can they tie that back to the weapon? The fire would have to be so intense in order to melt down a recovered bullet or projectile. The chances of that happening are little and none. And you're talking about only an hour on the burn pile. Dave, just so you can frame this out, just so that we can try to understand this. And I mentioned this before, but bear with me. Crematories, you're talking about approaching sometimes 1800 degrees, all right, in a contained space with contained sustainable fuel source. Because with crematories, you're talking about natural gas that's essentially ignited and is blowing onto bodies and consuming that body. You don't have this here. You're bleeding all kinds of energy off on a burn pile. Even for people, pay attention the next time you're driving down the road and you're seeing construction on property, or maybe the DOT is doing something along. Have you ever seen where they're burning piles of debris on the side of the road? And maybe you'll pass by that same pile 3 or 4 days and it doesn't look like it's reducing. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to get a fire so hot where everything will absolutely disappear and essentially vaporize. In this case, 1 hour would not be sufficient to the task, Dave.
In reality, I think that Amber Waterman thought that body would burn up quickly, all the evidence be gone, and when it didn't happen, she put the fire out, they rolled the body up, and took it off to a short distance from the house. And when they were confessing, I'm talking about her husband, Jamie, Amber Waterman did confess. Jamie Waterman did talk about what he did and after the fact. And it was Jamie Waterman that actually led law enforcement to the body of Ashley Bush. So now you've lost Ashley, mother of 3, Valkyrie, the unborn baby. 3 children don't have their mother. A man doesn't have his fiancée, mother of his child. I mean, they're gone. Everybody. All because of Amber Waterman.
And now Amber Waterman is going to be cooling her heels in federal prison because following this confession that eventually they were able to obtain from her, she will be sentenced to the federal penitentiary. And that sentencing is scheduled to take place October 15th, 2024. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.